much bigger problem than any of us individually, but it's also something that really challenges us even at the city, regional, and state level. So we really rely on the collective action of our residents to reduce and prepare for those risks. So again, I just really want to thank Councilmember Wengraf and Lori McWolter in the District 6 office, the District 5 office, as well as all the panelists who are taking the time to present here this evening and share their expertise. And finally, I really want to thank all of you who are here as well in taking a proactive interest and role in protecting your families in our community. I'd like to now hand it over to Councilmember Hahn.
Thank you, Councilmember Droste. And I think you've covered most of it. I want to particularly thank the people who are speaking this evening and giving their expertise and time to us. Those who are attending, thank you so much to the community for your continued concern and care for our extreme fire hazards and ways to mitigate that. And of course, the greatest thanks to Councilmember Wengraf and her office for putting this together every year, always finding interesting new angles, making sure that people have a variety of information to take action in each household and give us the tools to do our part, not just to keep ourselves safe, but to keep our whole community safe. So without further ado, and with thanks to all, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Wengraf and looking forward to hearing from all the speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think actually this meeting is so timely because I just saw on the news that much of the state is under a red flag warning tonight and tomorrow. And it really does seem like fire season is upon us. So I'd like to get started. And now I'd like to introduce you to our fire department team. First, Chief Abe Roman will be joining us tonight. Assistant Chief Chris Pinto, who is the division head of the fire department's newly formed Wildland Urban Interface Division. Assistant Chief Kevin Ravilla, member of the Wildland Urban Interface Division and also responsible for promoting and public outreach regarding Firewise USA. And then we have also Kin Shin, who is our coordinator of emergency services. So I actually don't see, maybe I'm not catching them. Oh, there they are. Okay, great. Thank you all for joining us so much. And I think it's time for you to start your presentation.
Yes, if we get the presenter to bring up our presentation, please. And if we could have it in display mode, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking Councilmember Wengraf, Councilmember Droste, and Councilmember Hahn. These community hall meetings that Councilmember Wengraf has hosted over the year have been a really big opportunity and important opportunity for us to share information with you. I've worked for the Berkeley Fire Department since 1999 and was promoted to fire chief just last year. It's been a year now. Over these many years, it's been gratifying to see how the community has supported this department's growth in public safety initiatives with Measure GG and now Measure F. Slide 2, please. Tonight, I'm going to share more about how we're using these new Measure FF funds to reduce Berkeley's fire risk. I'm also joined tonight by 3 of our key staff members: Assistant Chief Chris Pinto, Assistant Chief Kevin Ravilla, our 2 assistant chiefs in our Wildland Urban Interface team, and they're going to walk you through the programs this division is leading to reduce our fire risk. Following that will be Kin Chin with our Office of Emergency Services. Kin will be going to talk about fire, weather, and evacuation. Here in Berkeley, we watch the weather, and when it's really dangerous, we move out of the way for fires before they start. Kin is going to walk through fire weather and the tools and workshops we have for you to protect your home and family now. Slide 3, please. The biggest development for us this year has been thanks to Measure FF funding. For wildfire specifically, this year's Measure FF budget is $3.5 million. With this funding, we've been able to start up our Wildland Interface Division. I'll be naming an assistant chief this week that will be leading those efforts. We've been building this program with hard work from retired Berkeley Fire Department staff. This is great for us because they already understood the department and our community from their many years of experience here. In fact, I worked for both Assistant Chief Pinto and Assistant Chief Revilla as I came up through the ranks in our department. They and their colleagues have been able to hit the ground running. They'll tell you more about the WUI division's work to date. We're using Measure FF funds to reduce the fire risk in 3 different ways. We're now inspecting all properties in the hills. This gives us a better eyes on the specific hazards out there and the challenges that community members are dealing with. We're also doing the community wildfire protection plan to figure out where we need to focus our efforts first, which activities in which areas are going to provide the greatest protection to our people and their homes. And third, we know that this all starts with you on the ground, on your properties, and with your neighbors. Our WUI team is going to walk through some of the key steps to reduce fire risk in your property and how you can work with your neighbors to become the designated fire-wise community. We know we have big challenges ahead. We will continue to have Diablo winds, which will push fire quickly down the hill. And on top of that, climate change is definitely here. Our multi-year drought is drying out our plants and vegetation. We all have to adapt to this new normal. Measure FF shows us that the community understands and cares of the risks that we're facing and is ready to move forward. Now I'm going to hand it over to Assistant Fire Chief Chris Pinto to walk us through how we're putting your faith to work for us.
Thank you, Chief Roman. Can everybody hear me okay? Sound check. Am I good? Thank you, Chief Roman. Good evening. I'm Assistant Chief Chris Pinto with the Berkeley Fire Department Wildland Urban Interface Division. I retired back in 2011 after 31 years of service, including 7 years at Station 4 up on the hillside, or low on the hillside, I guess I would say. I responded to the Woodhaven fire way back in 1980, and I responded to the 91 firestorm, the historic firestorm in Oakland Berkeley Hills in 91. Chief Roman has invited me back to work with a focus towards significantly expanding our wildfire mitigation efforts here in Berkeley. Tonight, we're going to outline for you how we have expanded our defensible space inspection, vegetation inspection program, describe how we are engaging with the community to establish fire-wise neighborhoods, review the City of Berkeley debris bin and fire fuel chipper programs. But first, I want to start off with our community wildfire protection plan. Next slide, please. A community wildfire protection plan. We call that also a CWPP, one and the same. The Berkeley Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP, will be our roadmap towards strengthening our community-wide wildfire mitigation efforts. We have contracted with a local expert, Wildland Resource Management, to facilitate the process of developing an effective CWPP specific to conditions here in Berkeley, and that can be updated periodically as conditions change. It's going to be our blueprint for hazard mitigation in Berkeley's very high severity fire zones, as well as the rest of the city. Our CWPP process just kicked off on May 13th and is scheduled for completion in 9 months or in early 2023. The CWPP process is a collaborative one and will offer much opportunity for input from property owners, residents, and stakeholders. Community engagement will be available through an online hub site, which is coming in late July. And there will be 3 opportunities for discussion and input through the Disaster and Fire Safety Commission public meetings in August, September, and December. The Community Wildfire Protection Plan is a public document and will reside, excuse me, in our online hub, where it will be accessible to the public. The completed CWPP will include a hazard and risk assessment described in a short series of story maps, a set of prioritized hazard reduction strategies and potential projects, and finally, an action plan for implementation of the projects. I think it's important to mention here, the Berkeley Fire Department routinely coordinates vegetation and wildfire mitigation issues on a regional basis with surrounding agencies that share borders with Berkeley through our participation in the Hills Emergency Forum. We coordinate monthly, we coordinate monthly with Oakland Fire Department, Kensington Fire Department, the Moraga-Orinda Fire Department, and CAL FIRE. We also coordinate through the Hills Emergency Forum with the UC Berkeley, Lawrence Laboratories, and East Bay Regional Parks, and finally East Bay Municipal Utilities District. These neighboring fire departments and agencies will also have an opportunity to engage and have input as stakeholders in our CWPP through the Hills Emergency Forum. And I'll try and provide a link later in the comments section to the Hills Emergency Forum for anyone who's interested in learning more about them. On to the next slide, I'd like to talk about our expanded defensible space inspections. Through Measure FF funding, we have expanded our defensible space vegetation inspections program from 1,331 parcels east of Grizzly Peak to now 8,574 parcels, which encompasses all of Berkeley fire zones 2 and 3. I'll also try and provide a link in comments after my presentation to show what our zone maps are so you can see fire zones 2 and 3. But basically, it's the whole hillside in Berkeley. Our annual inspections begin on May 1st each year and are now conducted by dedicated inspectors from the Berkeley Fire Department Wildland Urban Interface Division. We call that the WUI division for short. This expansion represents a net increase of 7,200 additional parcels. Our 2022 inspections are presently underway. Next slide, please. Since expanding our defensible space inspection program 9 months ago, our WUI inspectors have completed 7,644 inspections on 6,480 parcels, with 5,784 of these properties having passed inspection. Well, these are excellent compliance numbers. We anticipate our compliance rate will drop going forward, especially after the California Board of Forestry releases the new Zone 0 regulations, which are anticipated in early 2023. For those of you who do not know what Zone 0 is, we're just talking about the immediate area from first 5 feet of ground surrounding the perimeter of your home. That's a critical area that needs to be maintained to prevent the spread of fire to your home, to your structure. Coming in July, our WUI inspectors will be switching to a new digital inspection software designed specifically for defensible space inspections and home hardening evaluations. Our owners or residents will be able to securely interact with their inspection report online. Inspection reports will provide customized checklists which are personalized to your property with links to resources. The user-friendly inspection report should help residents understand priorities and how to resolve any fire code violations or issues on their property. The data from this inspection application will also be utilized to track our inspection program performance, trends, and really it's an important component is to improve our community risk modeling as well. Next slide, please. Our 2020 vegetation inspections are presently underway, as I mentioned earlier, and it's important for me, I think, to underscore our inspectors they perform their inspections from the public right of way. Inspectors do not enter private properties unless invited by the homeowner. In many instances, our inspectors will ring the doorbell and try to contact the occupant or owner and ask them to walk the property with the inspector. Sometimes residents are concerned about potential violations on a neighbor's property. If so, they can always contact us, invite us to their property to view the conditions on the neighbor's property. And we can do that so long as we're not climbing ladders or if it's plainly viewable from your yard, we'll come and look at it for you and help mitigate the problem. We will be sending a June mailer out to all Hills properties in Fire Zone 2 and 3 with a self-inspection checklist enclosed to help residents understand how to prepare their property and be ready for their inspection. We want to emphasize that now is the time of the year to remove seasonal weeds, cut down and control seasonal grasses. And I just want to quickly review with you guys what our inspectors will be looking for when they come to your property for an inspection. Our inspectors will check to make sure that you've removed dead leaves, needles, vegetation from roofs, rain gutters, and deck, porches, and stairways. That's critical. Right on your structure there, it'll help protect it from embers and radiated heat spreading the fire to your structure. Remove all dead and dying grass, plants, and shrubs and trees and other plants adjacent to or overhanging a building. They're going to look to make sure that you moved or separated live flammable ground covers and shrubs, and that removal of flammable vegetation and items that could catch fire, which are adjacent to or below combustible decks, balconies, and stairs. We also look to make sure your address numbers are displayed and readable from the street or from access road. And we check your chimney or stovepipe openings to make sure they're covered with a metal screen, which generally we ask for an opening of 3/8 to a 1/2 inch on that screen. You don't want to put too fine of screen over your chimney for it will restrict the flow of smoke. We really want to emphasize the importance of maintaining your vegetation through the entire season. We encourage frequent removal of accumulated dead combustible vegetation, debris, including dead leaves, needles, pine cones, and branches from your roof, rain gutters, and within 30 feet of your home, with greater frequency during the summer and fall. A buildup of dead vegetation and debris around your home can render it extremely vulnerable to ignition from embers and radiated heat. That concludes my portion of the presentation, and I would now like to introduce Assistant Chief Ravilla. Go ahead and take it away, Kev. It's all yours.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, excuse me. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kevin Ravilla. Like Chief Pinto, I am a retired annuitant with 30 years of service to the city of Berkeley. Tonight, I will be talking about vegetation disposal programs in Firewise USA. Vegetation disposal programs are Debris Bin Program and Firefield Chipper Program. These programs run from June 6th to September 23rd, available in areas that pay the Firefield surcharge. The Firefield Chipper Program. Crews will chip branches and pick up bagged vegetation debris. Crews will pass through twice during the 16-week program to chip branches and again, pick up bagged vegetation debris. The Debris Bin Program. If you have a large volume of vegetative debris for removal, you may request a debris bin. You'll call 311 to reserve a bin. Free compostable bags to bag your vegetation. 1 roll per residence. You can pick up the bags at fire stations 2, 3, 4, and 7, and the city's corporation yard on Alston Way. For more information, go to www.berkeleyca.gov, then search for chipper. For smaller amounts of debris, you can include the vegetation in your weekly pickup bin or purchase paper plant debris bags with the City of Berkeley logo from Ace Hardware, located on 2020 Millview Street, or the Berkeley Transfer Station, located at 1201 2nd Street. These paper bags will be picked up during the regular weekly service. This is not part of the Firefield Chipper Program. Next slide. So what is Firewise USA? The National Firewise USA Recognition Program provides a collaborative framework to help neighbors in a geographic area to get organized, find direction, and take actions to increase the ignition resistance of their home and community, and to reduce wildfire risk at the local level. The program's benefits are you create the framework for action. You learn about wildfire. You get a peace of mind knowing that you're doing something to protect your home and the community. It's a community building project, working with your neighbors. You build citizen pride, you get publicity, being nationally recognized and locally. Possible access to funding and cost sharing programs. Insurance discounts with certain insurance carriers, as well as possibly keeping your home insurance from being canceled or not renewed. I'm really excited about this program and its numerous benefits. We are looking forward to working with you and your neighbors to create a wildfire-resistant Berkeley. Together, we can make a difference. Please call the number on the slide and set up a meeting with us. And finally, I'm very excited to announce our first Firewise community in the city of Berkeley, the Acacia Neighborhood Firewise Community. We are so proud of the work they've done and will continue to do. Congratulations to the Acacia Neighborhood Firewise Community. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce my colleague, Ken Chin, of the Office of Emergency Services.
Hey, were you guys unable to hear any of that? I think I just unmuted. Sorry about that. Hey, everybody, my name's Ken Chin. I have the privilege to work in the Fire Department's Office of Emergency Services. And I'm going to talk a little bit about fire weather and evacuation. Highlight some of the key resources and very key concepts for all community members. And if there is a fire in Berkeley, you all know that Berkeley Fire Department is going to do everything in its power to help everyone endangered to get off the hill and out of harm's way. But we all know that for fast moving fires with our narrow roads and dense population, that starting an evacuation once the fire ignites may not be enough. So as a community, we had to undergo a bit of a paradigm shift in our thinking about how to get out of the path of a wind-driven fire. Next slide, please. Wind-driven fires in low humidity environments have become more and more common and destructive in our state of California. The good news is that catastrophic fires most often happen and have a relationship with weather. Science gives us some ability to predict weather, giving us the possibility of advance notice of conditions that create the greatest danger here in Berkeley. This table you see on the screen, it shows two key factors in fire weather. On one axis is humidity. The lower the humidity, the drier it is, the faster a fire will spread. The other factor on the other axis is wind speeds. Faster winds push a fire more quickly. The National Weather Service monitors all of this and issues red flag warnings when conditions are especially dry and windy. The red flags covered the red and purple area you see on this chart. But a few years ago, the Berkeley Fire Department took this a step further. Next slide, please. You'll see that red and purple area on this chart, but we're going to focus on this purple. The really catastrophic fires happen under extremely windy or extremely dry conditions. So in Berkeley Fire Department, we term these conditions extreme fire weather, and that's the area in purple. You can see that weather conditions around some of the state's deadliest fires have happened within this purple range, with the lowest humidities and the highest winds. Next slide, please. When we do have an extreme fire weather day, that means that fires can spread quickly. Because of this, we know that starting an evacuation once the fire ignites may not be enough. The safest place for you to be on a day like that is out of the hills. So part of our charge to you as a resident is to consider, what can you do now to make it easier, smoother, to temporarily have your household stay out of the hills and out of harm's way during these very specific, but to some extent predictable conditions, and which are for now just a few days a year. Next slide, please. We've developed a number of tools that you can use to help you plan. If you visit our website, you can download a household fire weather planning tool. You can use this tool to guide you in making a tailored plan for your household, considering everyone's abilities and risk tolerance. We also have a video series that gets into a lot more detail than we have time for tonight in our overview. Next slide, please. In addition to tonight's brief overview, we are planning workshops that will focus on helping you develop your plans. Our first workshop is already scheduled for June. And we can use more time to prepare for fire season. So we're doing it earlier this year. Join us on June 15th on Zoom, and you can register on Eventbrite. We'll have that link for you in the presentation slides. Also, sign up for our email list, our CERT newsletter. There's a link there on our page as well, where you can get notified of the upcoming workshops. Next slide, please. Lastly, I'd like you to get to know a few of our ongoing programs that will help everybody get ready. And these two systems that I want to point you out to, the first one is AC Alert. So when we have fire weather or fire evacuation, we will use a lot of systems to share information with you. AC Alert is a critical one. Sign up your phone and your email address so we can reach you in an emergency. We can send you text messages, voicemails, and emails. You can sign up at acalert.org. The second tool is Zone Haven. Zone Haven is a real-time evacuation map. We break Berkeley into numbered zones. And when we have a fire evacuation, it will be based on these zones. So right now, what we want you to do is go to this website, community.zonehaven.com, and find your zone. You should bookmark this website as well. So if something is happening, you can track it in real time. Lastly, we're also working on one more system, which is an outdoor warning system. This will provide another tool in our alerting and information sharing abilities. Speaker or siren system with an aim to cover as much of the city as possible. We're currently in the permitting process and hoping to begin construction at the first 5 pilot sites this summer. This is an important partnership with many parts of our community, neighborhoods, schools, the UC, and other organizations where we will be placing these devices. Next slide. Lastly, we have this list of resources and links. When you guys get this presentation, you'll be able to see these links. The chiefs and I will stay on for the remainder of the program, and we'll be there for the question and answer session. And for now, I'll turn it back over to Councilmember Waingraff.
Well, thank you, Ken. I know that many of you probably have questions. I'd like to ask you to just jot those questions down now and save them for our question period at the end of all of our presentations. There's a lot of information I know to absorb, so I'm asking you to write them down so that you don't forget. I also want to let you know, I asked Scott Ferris from the Parks Department to join us tonight, but he was unable to. The Parks Department has, since 1991, as part of their fire fuel tree reduction program, removed 294 trees from parks and city property throughout the very high hazard fire zone. And there's a list of another 40 trees that they are hoping to remove by the end of the fiscal year 22, which is June 30th. So they have been doing an amazing job identifying dead and diseased trees and removing them. Okay, now we're going to move on to the presentation from the California Department of Insurance. And I want to tell you that we have about 200 people on this webinar. And I know that many of you have received notices of non-renewal from your insurance companies. So I thought it would be timely and important for us to have representatives from Commissioner Laura's office here with us tonight to let you know about what's going on and what the landscape looks like and what we can expect in the future. So I'd like to introduce you to Tonya Martin and also to Peter Mesa from Commissioner Laura's office.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. And thank you, Councilwoman, and also the other amazing council members for inviting the California Department of Insurance to be part of this very important conversation to protect everyone and their property. So thank you very much. Go ahead and start the slide if you'd like to. First. slide, please. There we go. Under the direction of California Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara, our department is dedicated to protect all policyholders and especially the homeowners like yourself. For those of you that have not heard of our department, we do not sell insurance. We regulate all aspects of insurance, from home and life to auto and long-term care. We are here to protect you. In short, we are like the insurance police. Joining me today, as the councilwoman mentioned, is my team member, Peter Mesa, who's an associate insurance compliance officer. He will be online to also assist with additional questions at the end of today's presentation. In this presentation, I will explain the roadmap of how our department is addressing the issues that homeowners and businesses like you are facing since the commissioner has been in office, how we gathered the information, and how we're fighting back to protect you. From non-renewals to price increases, it's time to see a change. Slide 2, please. How we gathered information on what homeowners are facing. From the minute the commissioner was elected, he began traveling around the state and meeting with homeowners like you to hear directly from you about their struggles with insurance. We met with over 25,000 people in 40 counties. The commissioner wanted to hear all the concerns around availability and affordability of homeowners insurance. And he wanted to take it all in consideration as we looked for solutions. Since 2019, we have held 60 events, including visits to annual meetings, especially for consumers in the surrounding counties. Next slide, please. Learning from our first responders, we tackled the immediate need. The commissioner started working with the legislature on laws that helped wildfire survivors, including increasing payouts and benefits, as well as increasing coverage for building code upgrades. If consumers were experiencing losses, they should receive the benefits they paid for with their coverage. Slide 4, please. By implementing a law the commissioner authored while serving in Senate, we have given temporary protection to more than 4 million policyholders from non-renewal over the past 3 years following governors declared wildfire disasters. This law gives 1 year protection regardless of whether you suffered a loss, helping to give people security and stabilize markets. If we have more governor declared wildfire disasters in the future, this law will also protect them. Next slide, please. What we are doing is making a difference. In the latest data, non-renewals by insurance companies decreased by 10% statewide for the first time since our massive wildfires in 2017 and 2018. That is more than 22,000 homeowners who retained their insurance. Next slide, please. Along with a decrease in non-renewals, we're seeing an increase for options for consumers. Companies like Farmers, Allstate, CSAA, and State Farm have committed to increase the number of homeowner policies written in the state, and they will either cease or limit non-renewals. These companies represent 46% of our market. Next slide, please. California is the nation's largest residential insurance market. And although 90% of homeowners have regular insurance coverage, the FAIR Plan, the insurance of last resort, also needs to work for those people who need it. We must modernize the FAIR Plan because everyone deserves to be able to buy insurance that they cannot afford, that they can count on. Next slide, please. When the commissioner took office, the FAIR Plan's coverage limits had not been increased in decades, while the Consumer Price Index has doubled over that time. The commissioner ordered increased coverage limits for both homeowners and commercial policies, giving people twice the coverage they had before. We worked with legislature to authorize coverage for farms, wineries, and other agricultural businesses, which were prevented under law from from assessing the FAIR plan. He also ordered the FAIR plan to offer a comprehensive option to homeowners alongside its standard limit policy, sort of like a wraparound policy that would include the damages inside the property as well. The FAIR plan sued the commissioner, but the judge upheld his authority. And believe me, we will not stop until the consumers have this option. Next PowerPoint, please. On this slide, we address actions that are a lot of you are facing, which is the non-renewals or deny of coverage. This is our new program called Safer from Wildfires. For the last year and a half, we've been working with the Emergency Response and Preparedness Agency and Governor Newsom's administration. And in January, we announced Safer from Wildfires, an insurance framework based in fire science and endorsed by our emergency leaders and the Department of Insurance. This is the first time these agencies have worked together in our history on a wildfire safety plan for insurance. We took a ground look up at protecting homes and businesses. Next slide, please. Safer from Wildfires is a three-tier approach for home safety. A lot of these things, Chief Roman already mentioned that they are helping the community to put forth. So the first one that we're doing is it starts with protecting your home and business. And the second, go to the next slide, please, is protecting the immediate surroundings through defensible space and moving ignition sources like sheds away from the structure. Next slide, please. And finally, involving the entire community to fire protection. That includes programs like that was mentioned before, the Firewise, which brings neighbors together to protect their homes. This community-wide part is critical. California has nearly 500 Firewise communities today, with more forming all the time. By working together, we can do much more than we can do on our own to make our community safer with this new framework. This is what we heard directly from our first responders that will help make us safer and save lives. Safer from Wildfire aligns recommendations from the state fire marshal's low-cost retrofit list and fire chiefs across the state, along with recommendations with the Insurance Institute for Businesses and Home Safety and United Policyholders. You can see the Safer Wildfire list on our website at insurance.ca.gov. Next slide, please. To make Safer for Wildfires a reality, Commissioner Lara introduced new regulations based on a real simple concept. Again, coming directly from consumers like you that we have met across the state. The bottom line, when you do the work, you should see the reward. By making homes and businesses safer, we can bring risk down and bring costs down too. The Commissioner's actions are focused on safety and transparency. His new regulations do this in 3 ways. Pricing, he is requiring insurance companies to incorporate a Safer from Wildfires framework into their pricing, driving down costs for consumers. Insurance companies will have to submit a new rate filings that recognize this safety. Transparency, consumers will receive their property's wildfire risk score and the reasons for it, and our department will have the oversight. And next, the right to appeal. Consumers will be able to appeal their risk termination when you do the work. Public input is critical right now. We had a hearing on April 13th that accepted public comments. As the commissioner reviewed, he evaluated all the input, and this summer, we are looking to implement all these regulations. Next slide, please. By doing everything possible to protect our communities, we will be more prepared when wildfires do occur. The Safer from Wildfires framework is helping the commissioner and the Department of Insurance as the regulator of the nation's largest insurance market to expand insurance incentives, homes and businesses that will save money and encourage safety. We know this works because of our oversight and advocacy. We have 12 companies in county offering discounts for home hardening actions for those with wildfire risk. These companies represent 40% of the market. It was less than 7% when the commissioner took office. When these regulations are implemented, it will be 100%. Next slide, please. This includes my presentation. I know there'll be a number of questions and we're ready to answer them for you. The Department of Insurance, we're always here to help, whether it's after disaster or if you just have a question about your coverage or your policy. We're always available via telephone at 1-800-927-HELP, 1-800-927-HELP, and through our website at insurance.ca.gov to assist you with your claims. Again, we look forward to the question and answer session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tanya. A lot of very interesting information in your presentation.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll have questions for you during the question period. Thank you very much.
you.
And this is a perfect segue now to Cheryl Drinkwater's presentation on home hardening. How exactly do you harden your home to fire embers? So I'd like to introduce now Cheryl Drinkwater. We're really looking forward to your presentation, Cheryl. Thank you for joining us tonight. Cheryl, you're still muted.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen now and then I'll get started. So can everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I want to thank you, Councilmember Wengraf and your team and Council Members Drosty and Hahn for letting me present at your community fire safety meeting. Besides being an architect, I am also a volunteer safety assessor with the State Office of Emergency Services. Along with other related professionals, we assess buildings after disasters to determine if they can be safely occupied. After my deployment experience, I began to immerse myself in the subject of home hardening. It's been about 5 years now. This talk has a lot of information. Some of it has been spoken about already, which you'll see. But I'm going to go through it fairly quickly, but we will have that Q&A at the end, and you can always email me. Excuse me. If a fire is coming towards your home like this, get out. And we talked about evacuating early. Even with a hardened home, be prepared, have situational awareness, and evacuate early. Wildfires are inevitable. Does that mean that wildland-urban interface fire disasters are inevitable? Fire research has shown that homeowners can create ignition-resistant homes to prevent community wildfire disasters. When I was in Paradise, we saw a few different outcomes. We saw a small number of homes that showed no damage. There was minor damage to landscape structures, but these homes fared better because they were built to newer codes and the vegetation was not as established. And evergreen trees can survive wildfire. These trees are less vulnerable to embers, but they can ignite from the ground due to ladder fuels. Tree spacing and the slope of your property are also factors in how fire impacts your home. Research shows that the risk to your home is likely 90% to come from flying embers or firebrands. And home ignitions result from conditions local to a home. A home's ignition vulnerabilities principally determine home ignitions. This area of the home and its immediate surroundings is now known as the home ignition zone. And this image on the right is a laboratory, and I'm going to show you in a couple of slides a video that really drives home this idea of windblown embers. So there are 3 types of exposures that lead to ignition: flame contact, radiant heat, and windblown embers. Windblown embers can ignite your neighbor's home, other structures, and then in a chain reaction, increase the risk to your home. So those annual inspections are important, but you must address your property year-round. And we've been talking about zones, and these are the home ignition and defensible space zones. So zone 1 is that 0 to 5 feet, the home ignition zone. This is the edge of your home and out 5 feet. And so this is that code that will be will go into effect in 2023, hopefully. And zone 2 is 5 to 30 feet, fire break zone. Zone 3, 30 to 100 feet, reduced fuel zone. So start with zone 1 on your own property. Remove ladder fuels, dead overcrowded plants, and organic mulch next to the house. Reduce dry fuels near fences and trellises, and replace those old decks, fences, and gates. So this is the typical Berkeley Hills conditions. Most homes are close together, surrounded by mature vegetation. And Berkeley also has zones. You heard about this, and here is the zone map that one of our chiefs mentioned earlier. Berkeley also has these zones 1, 2, and 3, but these are the fire zones. Some people get confused about that. It's come up in my talk, so I really wanted to address it. These zones that we're talking about here in plan are trigger special construction requirements for structures located in that very high fire hazard severity zone. So now I will go ahead and show you this video, and just bear with me here. It's 2 minutes.
So from start to finish, we're going to start with our ember generators, which we use to recreate a realistic ember exposure. Embers are those small burning and smoldering particles that may travel ahead of the fire front. And what we do with our generators is we create the realistic exposure, and in our wind tunnel, we're able to throw them at a building. And then we have a building that has 2 sides to it, a good side, which uses wildfire resistant construction, and what we're considering a typical building that we would see in a wildfire prone area. Exactly as we expected, that mulch on the ground there caught fire from the embers. The fire from the mulch burned up under this deck, and this whole deck was on fire. And so this fire on this deck caused flames right against the home. And then if we look there at the base of the door, there was actually the flames from this deck that burned through the bottom of the door. And on the inside of the house, we started to see smoke and flames. And so because this deck was a combustible material attached to the building, when the embers led to the ignition of this deck, we got flames inside of the building. Here we are on the wildfire resistant side of the house, where we had non-combustible siding, a 5-foot non-combustible zone, and 6-inch gap. We had a metal gutter and multi-pane windows. And we see, in comparison to the non-wildfire resistant side, this side had the same ember exposure. If you look here in the mulch, you can actually see some of the embers that had accumulated, but because they had no susceptible fuel to ignite, they just landed there and fizzled out. Now here we have ornamental vegetation that again is susceptible to the embers, but because it's more than 5 feet away from the home, it didn't have enough energy to ignite, and it never led to a flame impact on the building.
So, pretty impressive video. I love that video. Our homes can be an emotional topic. Home maintenance and fire risk. How ready are you to take action? Why doesn't everyone do enough? It costs too much. I can't do it myself. I don't have time. My neighbor isn't doing anything. There is no deadline. Can any of you relate to this? You can take action to give your property the best chance. Reduce your risk and make small to large changes to reduce hazards. Get to know and work with your neighbors. Get everyone on board. All ages and abilities have something to offer in helping to create a fire-adapted neighborhood. And also check in with your neighbors, especially if they are elderly, disabled, or have a medical condition, as their homes can have an impact on the work you do. So much data is being collected by CAL FIRE and other agencies on how to improve the survivability of a home. And this pie chart on the left shows that homes built after 2008, 50% received no damage. And this was for the Camp Fire in Paradise. And the bar graph on the right is the cost to build a new hardened home. According to this recent report, shows that a hardened home is similar to build in cost to a typical home. The components may vary, but overall, the cost is very similar. California is leading the way in preventative measures. 2 new disclosure laws went into effect in 2021. A seller must disclose a home's vulnerability to wildfires. So number one was homes designated as in the high fire severity zone and built before 2010 must show any of the structure's vulnerabilities to wildfires. And number two, owners must provide documentation stating that the property is in compliance with local laws pertaining to defensible space. Proposed new legislation and amendments to existing laws are continuing all the time for new buildings in the wildland-urban interface. And this website on the right, I'm showing Berkeley, but you can look up any city, is from the Forestry Service, and it shows different things like risk to homes, exposure type, vulnerable populations. It's great, good website. And as Tanya just discussed in the insurance presentation, a new regulation would require the insurance companies to factor in all wildfire safety actions. And I won't go into that, but it is this 1, 2, 3 and safer from wildfires. And then we have the California State Pilot Program for home hardening retrofits. This is it's only operating in 2 counties so far. It is called the Wildfire Mitigation Program, and it's a Cal OES, Cal Fire, and FEMA partnered initiative aimed at strengthening communities by developing a home hardening grant program for property owners to retrofit their homes in high fire risk areas. So the next few slides, I just want to show you about how to get started with your neighbors. And some of this has also been discussed. So the FireWise program, I will not go into detail. Chief Ravella talked about it in a lot more detail, but it basically is a collaborative framework. You work with your neighbors. And I like what Tanya said, that the more people, the more work gets done. So you would get organized, perform an assessment with a fire official, and then take action to increase the ignition resistance of your home and community. Also, you can create a skills inventory with your neighbors using a shared database like a Google Doc, and you would put the household name and any special skills that anybody might have, like a contractor or computer skills. Equipment, if anybody has a generator or a ladder or wind-up radio, you could record CERT classes or special needs. And group smaller retrofit projects together to create a larger project that is more attractive to a contractor or handyman. An example would be replacing crawl space or attic vents with recommended home hardened vents or screening. And the Diablo Fire Safe Council has a cost share assistance program, and it helps you to work with your neighbors to create a defensible space project, both in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. And the Diablo Fire Safe Council receives funding from a variety of sources. So get your application in with your neighbors so you can be added to our list. So we can't just all rebuild our homes and make them fireproof from the ground up. So we're dealing mostly with existing homes. So this next half of my talk, we'll talk about the different components of the home and what you can do in 2 different ways. First part will be kind of a quick list of the components in a cost tier way, illustration, and then I'll go in a little bit more detail with photos and detail and more information. So here are the home components. So cost tier 1, this is the easy stuff. You've heard a lot of this before. Have situational awareness and be aware of red flag warnings. Sign up for AC alerts in Alameda County. Clear items around your home and remove debris from your property. Make your property inviting to firefighters by keeping paths clear. Install new 4-inch high visibility address signage. Make small repairs to your home and garage. And connect long hoses to hose spigots around your home and have those ready to go when you evacuate. Cost tier 2. You may need some help. You may be able to do it yourself. Make repairs to your roof, fences, and deck before fire season. Seal small cracks or openings in walls. Screen foundation vents. Screen or replace your roof eaves. Replace vulnerably located siding with ignition-resistant material. And trim those tree branches away from your roof. And cost tier 3, these are the larger projects. Replace your windows and skylights with dual pane and tempered glass. Replace the entire roof with an approved Class A roof. Replace siding with ignition-resistant materials and replace your deck with ignition-resistant materials. And possibly install a fire suppression system. If your home is in those fire zones 2 and 3, you may be required to make some of these changes when you apply for a building permit. So the balance of this presentation is going through these components in a little bit more detail. So you will become skilled in home inspection and clear that vegetation and other flammable materials away from your home, fix windows, make vent repairs. These images that were taken by one of my colleagues showed a home that survived in paradise, but you can see they just kind of raked everything away from the home, probably upon evacuation. Just consider how these embers are trying to get into your home. Roof maintenance. Remove debris from your roof, clean gutters and clear skylights. Make repairs to roofing materials. Cut back those tree canopies. This dry material can be ignited by windblown embers. Those gutter guards that are becoming very popular, people mention them a lot to me, they too can allow embers to ignite fuels and get closer to the roof openings. You need to clean them off frequently. Even though they're not sitting in the bottom of the gutter, they are on the top. That makes it actually a little bit more vulnerable. And the two bottom photos are just showing some roofs that really need to be addressed. Pine needles, leaves on skylights and roofs, and broken roof tiles. These are things that need to be repaired. Remove debris from roof valleys. If this fuel sits long enough, it can burn through to the attic. And then this is a concept that is a little bit more involved, but adding sheet metal flashing or replacing siding with a fiber cement material at the roof to wall connection. So on the left photo or the center photo, there's a lower roof and an upper story wall. And where those two meet, there's all this leaf litter. That area there, you would go through and replace that where they intersect with a fiber cement siding or sheet metal, just to give it a hardened disconnect for those embers so that they cannot just sit there and ignite. And on the right is a dormer. Consider replacing the whole dormer with a fiber cement material. Foundation vents. Screen foundation vents or use approved venting products designed to catch embers before they enter your crawl space. And these are almost all proprietary foundation vents here. On the left are some very fancy copper fire safety vents from Brandguard with a baffle. And then the top right is a Vulcan product that has a baffle and an intumescent coating, and it expands when exposed to heat. And then on the bottom right, you have a fire screen that has a screen and a baffle. E-vents can make your home also vulnerable to windblown embers. Screen open E-vents with wire mesh, or retrofit your eave with a closed soffit to prevent embers from entering your attic. And in the top right, I just wanted to illustrate these eaves. So the first image is very, very common. Most of us have eaves like this. The soffited eave closes that whole area up. And so that also occurs, you'll see, in the Berkeley Hills. And on the far right is a closed eave, but with a vented attic or a vented strip to allow that ventilation to occur in your attic. That would have the proper screening. And also walk around your home and your garage and repair or fill any openings with waterproof caulk. Look at the trim, siding, vents, utility penetrations, and hose bibs for gaps. The wall horizontal connection. This is similar to that roof wall. Add sheet metal flashing or replace with a fiber cement siding at the lowest course, so like those first 3 rows. Treat this first 6 inches as a vertical part of the non-combustible zone. New foundations are required to have a 6-inch exposed height of concrete at the bottom, and that is illustrated in the far right. That is a requirement now for new foundations. And in the center is a deck that is illustrating this disconnect where the siding and the deck meet. You typically have metal flashing there as a waterproofing detail, but this also creates that disconnect for embers so that they cannot ignite in the corner of your wall. Fences. The best practice is to use non-combustible fence materials. And a more open design also makes it difficult for windblown embers to accumulate at the bottom of the panels and posts. And of course, keep fences clear of debris. So in the bottom left is sort of an image of what not to do. That's just a little bit too much vegetation within this flammable deck. But on the other side of this slide, we have a concrete fence. We have a metal fence, and then there's this bamboo composite product that is approved by the state fire marshal that you can use for fencing. Another option is to separate your fence from your house or make the last 5 feet of the fence a non-combustible material to reduce the chance of the fence bringing fire to your home. And for gates, use non-wood gate posts and hinge the gate on the opposite side of your home. When you evacuate, leave the gate open. It creates a disconnect from your home, but it also makes it safer for firefighters to enter your property. Vinyl windows and single pane glass are the most vulnerable and can fail. So options for improvement are dual pane windows Or better would be dual pane and tempered glass or laminated glass. And going the extra mile would be to install metal window shutters. Many window products are now clad on the outside with metal or fiberglass. These window upgrades all buy you time. And new skylights also are required to have a metal mesh screen. In fact, all screens are required to be metal. Roof replacement. A Class A rated roof is required for new roofs in the wildland urban interface. There are many options depending on the style of your home or your budget. So examples of Class A roofs would be concrete and clay roof tiles, approved metal roofs like this image in the bottom left, that's a standing seam metal roof, and then fiberglass asphalt composition shingles, AKA the comp shingle roof. That's a very common choice for replacing your roof. It just needs to be a Class A rated roof. And wood shake or shingle roof, even if treated, is typically not allowed for any roofs now in California. Siding. Fiber cement siding resists moisture, pests, and will not ignite when exposed to direct flame. And fire can burn untreated wood and metal vinyl siding products. It is the ability of the wall assembly to confine a fire. So siding material is an important factor in the protection of you and your home. And again, this buys you time. And I just have two examples here. One is that fiber cement siding. This one is from James Hardy. The James Hardy website has these images. And then the other one is Boral True Exterior. This is a composite material made from fly ash and polymer composites. Both of these siding materials can still transfer heat or burn if exposed to direct flame. So again, I talked about the wall assembly. A stucco-clad home, if maintained, will not ignite. It can provide a 1-hour fire rating if applied in 3 layers over a reinforcing mesh to create a 1-inch thick wall assembly. It's about 1 inch. Decks should be clear of debris and dead vegetation. A deck is, of course, vulnerable from above and below. Long-term exposure to embers can risk ignition of the siding of the home and can spread to other areas of the structure. And we saw this in the video from IBHS. And of course, do not store flammable materials under a deck or porch. And I'm just showing 3 examples of, pretty hardened decks. They're even still wood, but they are clear of any objects. They have gravel underneath. They're clear of any, not storing any wood or any other objects underneath. Most deck boards are combustible. And here are some examples of ember-resistant decks and approved by the State Fire Marshal decking products. And so there's that bamboo composite product. Again, they also have a decking product. And then there's a fire retardant waterproof membrane decking. This is a built-up style deck that has a Class A rating. And this is actually in the Berkeley Hills in Fire Zone 2. And then there's the Trex decking that is on the approved list. And then there's just a detail, a little maybe harder for some to look at this, but it's basically similar to the one in the top right, where you have kind of all these layers. You have fire retardant plywood, you have a waterproof membrane, and then you have a tile for the top surface. And then again, you see the metal flashing at that intersection of the wall and deck. Okay, so now it's time to make a plan, and you can start with the small stuff. And please try to work with your neighbors. And here is a resource that you can obtain from the Berkeley Fire Department. I left their email there at the bottom. You can request it. It may also be part of the mailer. And here are some good resources that I have collected over time, and we can get these resources to you. Also, they will also be in the recorded presentation. And my email is also here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. My goodness, I have a lot of work to do.
We all do. We all do.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we're gonna go to the question period, and I'm gonna just run through some instructions for how those of you in the audience can ask your questions. On the bottom of your screen, you should see a bunch of icons, and you may have a little hand that says raise hand, or if you don't see that, you may have something that says reactions. If you click on reactions, one of those icons will be raise hand. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to figure out how to do that. If you have a question, please raise your hand. And I will be able to see your raised hands, and I will call on you in order. I see that the questions are coming in. Okay, so Robert, you're number one. Robert, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Robert, yeah, there you go. You should be able to speak now.
Okay. All right. So my question is, I have not been canceled, although I live up on Panoramic Hill. I actually was canceled, but it's about 5 years ago, and I was able to get insurance via Geico to a company called Homesite, which is a totally legitimate outfit, but nobody's ever heard of it. And they operate out in New York, but they are legitimate here in California. But the latest thing is the renewal is a 50% increase. There you go. That's my problem. And I really don't know what to do other than trying to shop. And I know how hard it is for those of us on the Hill to even shop for anything else. What in the world can I do to, with that 50% hit, which is a lot?
Okay, Robert, I'm going to direct your question to Tanya Martin from Commissioner Laura's office.
Thank you.
Hi, Robert. Yes, we're hearing this a lot from the homeowners, and it's a very valid question. When it comes to shopping for insurance, on our website, we do have a list of liable agents. One thing that we've recently came across is that people have been reaching outside their area, just sort of like shopping around, like say you would a cable bill. You can shop around, and when the agencies know you're shopping around, then sometimes you can get a little discount that way too. And Peter, I'll let you add on something.
Yeah, that's correct, Tanya. So we've seen that sometimes agents in your area may have saturated the market, and we all know Insurance 101 is that you don't saturate the market in one place. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You have to separate them, and that's Insurance 101. So a lot of times you have agents that are selling in one area. They're appointed with a number of insurance companies, but perhaps not the same ones that are out in a different area. So we've seen some success in that. We've seen folks that have gone, like, for example, they'll go down into the Bay Area or down into the Fresno area, and check with brokers in that area. So that's one way to do it. We understand it's a problem. Another thing that we've seen and actually has been successful, and this was something that I saw even back in 2019 when I was in Santa Cruz. I gave 5 presentations in 2 days, and we had like 150 at each event. And a gentleman that was there in the front row raised his hand. He said, after I gave the presentation, he said, I was getting a cancellation notice, and then I was able to talk to the insurance company just to have a conversation with them, and was able to get, to stay on. So, I understand your issue is with the premiums, but
Right.
There's something there for you to consider if you're concerned about that particular insurance company canceling you and the premiums continue going up. But you can go to our website. We have information there. You can actually see some of the insurance companies. We have what we call a insurance home phone residential insurance finders tool that can give you some information on insurance companies that are writing in your area. That's another idea you can also utilize. And we just encourage you to, to keep us informed. If there's something we can do, file something with us, we can look into, something in particular with your insurance company that perhaps you want to keep that, or, your, other things that you're looking into. We'd love to help you. So those
Okay,
are a couple of ideas I give you.
thank you, thank you so much. We have many, many, many questions, so I'm going to move on now. And Robert, if you would write to me at my office, I may be able to send you some resource information as well. So thank you, Peter. Branya Feldman, if you unmute, we should be able to hear your question. There you go.
Okay, yeah. I have a question about the use of the Moso bamboo. Can that, I know it can be used for stairs and decks. Can it also be used, for example, on a garage?
Okay, I'm going to direct your question to Cheryl Drinkwater.
Hi. When you say a garage, do you mean as a siding material?
Yes.
So by itself, it probably could not be used as the finished siding on its own, but if it's part of a wall assembly that also includes,
Thank you, Robert.
if it's part of a wall assembly that also includes, framing and sheetrock on both the inside and the outside and plywood, it may be. I have not seen it in that application, but I would think it could be as a finished material, like maybe even outside the completed wall assembly.
Mm-hmm.
It would end up being kind of more of a decorative thing, but I have not done the full research on that. Now I probably will, just to learn that myself. But certainly if you had a complete wall assembly already, it could be added on as a decorative.
What about
element.
fencing?
Fencing, yes, I have seen that application, and because that is not confining fire and preventing that's not a life safety issue with a building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And Branya, please mute yourself now so we can move on to the next question. Thank you. Carol Curtis.
Hi, yes. I'm wondering about both these coatings that are supposed to be fire resistant that some companies offer to coat your siding and other, even I think your windows with, as well as exterior sprinkler systems that are installed on your roofs. If you can comment on how effective those are, and maybe also, I'm talking to a couple companies about that. Like, who would I talk to about making sure these companies are on the up? Is there anybody regulating this industry, or is there anywhere to find out about this since it's so new, I guess?
So Susan, I can address the gels and foams, if you like. So I spoke to sort of the authority at IBHS. He's retired now, but he does a lot of presentations. And I asked him about the foams and gels because a lot of people are interested in them and a lot of companies are promoting them, but they're really not a homeowner application. And they also have been proven through science, they are doing scientific experiments, that they don't last very long. So they're not really something to rely on. Really, the recommendation is to have a professional do it, but it has to be done at the right time, like right before you evacuate. And so it's a very tricky thing to do. And so I would say you have a lot of other things that you can do, retrofits to your home before you get to that.
This was supposed to last for 5 years, supposedly, these fire
Right.
resistant.
Yeah, again, if you look at the research so far, they just don't last as long as they say they do. They're too impacted by the elements, and even the installation can be affect the longevity. So.
Okay, and the fire sprinkler systems?
Oh, sorry, the fire sprinkler system, that is something that you do see either on the ground or on the roof. I don't have any recommendation on companies or anything like that, but again, it has to do with timing, right? You're not going to have it up there all the time. So who puts it up there, when, and how do you protect yourself? Because you really should be more focused on evacuating than installing sprinklers on your roof. If you have someone who can do that for you or hire somebody to do it at the right time, then it's definitely worth looking into.
No, it's a permanent system that's actually heat sensor activated. Or you can.
Yeah, then it would be, I would say, you know, vet the company and find out what their endorsements are, and, you know, if they're endorsed by their local fire department.
And oh, so it's a local fire department that you would check
I would
with?
say that would be one place to start.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Lyndon Laskowski.
Yeah, this is a variation on the question that we were just discussing, and it has to do with wooden decks. I understand that the most important thing we can do is keep them cleared of debris and don't store flammable things underneath them. But short of replacing them with something that is less combustible, are there any chemicals, coatings, or anything that can be done in the short term to make them a little more fire hardened?
So there are products out there. Again, it's, you know, they are affected by the elements. And I just had a client ask me about this as well. I would just say, don't make it the sole thing that you rely on. You know, you would go a long way by clearing the debris and keeping the deck clear and making sure you have that disconnect. Even if it's just something that you've kept your deck, as long as your deck is in fair condition and it's not falling apart, you know, or if you can replace certain deck boards. Another a slide that I didn't have in my this particular talk, some folks have replaced deck boards that are closest to the house with something that's ignition resistant. And so that, again, does not allow those embers to get caught up at the edge of the house. But I mean, again, look into the product, don't rely on it solely. And all timing is, when do you install it? You know, what if the fire comes in the 6th year? If it's, they say it lasts 5 years, you got to reapply. So it's another kind of responsibility.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Can I add that one simple thing you could do?
Yeah.
One simple thing which Cheryl showed in her presentation, they could screen it, you know, clear it, put a rock base on the ground under the deck, and put a screen around it to prevent the embers and the penetration. That could be another way to make it more hardened.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we'll move on now to Austin Henderson.
Thank you, Susan. I'm delighted to hear that the inspectors are willing to walk the property with the homeowner. How do we know when the inspectors are coming?
Okay, I'll turn that over to Chris Pinto.
Well, we train our inspectors to, if they identify properties where they're really clean and it's obvious from the street that they don't have any violations or issues, they may not ring a doorbell there. But on most properties, we try and have our inspectors knock or ring a doorbell, plus leave a door hanger after they leave with our contact information if you don't answer the door, so you'll know they were there. Has your property been inspected yet?
Yes, it was. And I got the door hanger and I appreciated it. And I was really sad that I didn't get to be there and learn from the inspector what they could teach me.
I see. Well, maybe next time. And if there's, and for residents who have a violation pending, let's say the inspector found a violation on their property, you can certainly call us and we'll come back then and walk the property and explain the violation to you too. Some people may have difficulty understanding exactly what we want when we're asking them to make changes. And so always call us, and we're very reactive to that and would come out and help you or discuss it over the phone, whatever is appropriate.
Is there any way of knowing in advance that they're going to be coming?
It's hard for it with 8,500 properties. It's hard to, or difficult to schedule and notify the residents when they'll be in the neighborhood. I'm at a loss for that, but I would say this just emphasizes how our inspectors really should try and make contact when they're out there. And the best we can do, if you're not available or if you do have questions, you can call us, and we're really reactive to that. That's about the best we can do at this point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Martina Kroll. Martina.
Hello. Hi.
Yes.
So I have a house in the Berkeley Hills that has 2 coastal live oaks with probably 80 or 90% of their foliage in the like zone 1, kind of intimately in contact with the house or over the house. And I'm wondering, can I cut those down, or are they protected? Because I did have them looked at once by the city of Berkeley, and they said they were not eligible to be cut down or removed. But if I were to simply trim them to make them safe, I would be left with trunks in the ground, but no, not really a tree, if that makes sense.
It does. Chief Roman, do you want to take that?
Yeah, it's a very specific case in that, and I would encourage you to call our fire prevention division, and we could look at that and really lay out a plan. A lot of it, other than just generalizing everything, a lot of times we do need to have a one-on-one conversation and really look at what the problem is so we come to a solid resolution there. So I do encourage you to give us a call for sure for that specific issue.
Well, do you guys have any coordination with the department that issues the permits for tree removal?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Next question, Liliana.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Hi, good evening. And thank you so much, Susan, for your excellent work with this. And thank you to all who presented. These were excellent presentations. I have a question regarding one of the key relationships that our community has in our collective effort to prevent fires. And I'm talking about our relationship with PG&E, which has been generally a difficult one. We have been having issues with PG&E regarding undergrounding, pole safety, vegetation management. And I would like to ask you, Susan, how is the city going to hold PG&E accountable for things that they need to do or they are not doing to help us prevent fires in our neighborhoods?
Well, it's a complicated question. The PG&E is not governed by the city of Berkeley. We don't tell PG&E what to do. We do have some regulations that guide what they can do. For example, they need permits to do certain things. But it's the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, that has authority over PG&E. And so it's really, if we want to see any big changes in PG&E, we need to work through the CPUC. And specifically about undergrounding, which you know, Liliana, I have been working on for 12 years.
Definitely.
The CPUC has changed the rules about undergrounding. And now there's no longer a 20A program currently. So until the CPUC says to PG&E, you have to do this, there's very little that the city of Berkeley can do.
And I understand that. And you have done an excellent job trying to push this issue. And I understand that the city doesn't govern doesn't rule on PG&E, but there are instances, for example, we discussed today, the Ridge substation that is in the heart of our neighborhood, right? And where PG&E seems to be doing whatever they want at what time they want without even alerting the neighbors. I'm very concerned about that. It's an open concern for me.
This is not a fire specific issue, Liliana.
Right.
But I understand what you're trying to say, but unfortunately, public utilities have the benefit of being able to do things that private property owners can't do. And it's complicated. I'm happy to talk to you more about it tomorrow.
Thank you.
But we have a long list of questions ahead
Sure.
of us, so I'd like to try to get to them.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thanks. Okay, Jenny Wink. Jenny, if you unmute yourself, we'll be able to hear your question. Jenny, can you unmute, push the unmute button? Okay, we can't hear you, Jenny. I'll come back to you after the next question from Howard Hertz. Howard, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, so my question is this. We lived on a slope property, and below our property, I'd say about 50 feet from the house, we have planted bamboos to block off the street and block off the neighbors. What are the rules or what are the guidelines with respect to growing bamboo, which I know is flammable, but keeping it away from the house?
Okay, I'll ask Chief Roman to answer that question.
Yes, and I'm actually going to pass that over to Chief Pinto.
Okay.
I'll answer that best I can. Just for everybody's knowledge, bamboo is considered a flammable vegetation that can be dangerous in fire conditions. And you certainly don't want to have large volumes of bamboo near your property or in that 30-foot zone near your property, nor do you want it close to the roadway, which is going to block, if it's flaming, it's going to be hard for people to get by, to evacuate, or for fire crews to get in. It would be a concern of our inspectors. Berkeley does not have an ordinance or that bans or prohibits bamboo. Our inspectors would look at conditions and make a judgment. Sometimes problem can be mitigated with care of the bamboo, limbing it up, creating airspace under it, making sure it's trimmed and well hydrated. And if it does catch on fire, the exposure or embers won't be in a place where it might spread the fire vertically or horizontally. But if we look at it and deem it to be a fire problem, we may ask you to do some severe cutback or even removal. That's certainly a good possibility. It could happen. It's just based on conditions, how it's maintained and where it's placed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jenny, I see that you've been able to unmute, so we'd like to hear your question now. Jenny? Are you there, Jenny? We can't hear you. Okay, I'm going to move down to Barbie Zeldis, and Jenny will come back to you again. Barbie, please unmute.
Yeah?
Yes, hi.
Oh, hi. It's a simple question about grills. We have a back deck that is, the bottom of it is concrete, the floor of it's concrete, and I would really like to get a grill. And I'm wondering if there are certain grills that are safer than others. Like I assume a propane grill would be safer to use than like a charcoal grill. But I don't know. I don't know if the fire department has a recommendation.
Chief Roman?
Yes, for sure. Propane, natural gas, that would be highly preferred instead of charcoal. One of the inherent problems with charcoal is that they reignite, especially under windy conditions. And we've had many, many fires that have reignited from charcoal. So certainly a propane one, you could automatically shut it off, it cools down, and there's no problem at all. So that's our recommendation for sure.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, we'll go back to Jenny. Jenny, do you want to ask your question now? Jenny Wink. Okay, still no Jenny. Okay, we'll go down to Cindy Rosenthal.
Thank you for taking my question, and thank you for sponsoring this forum. Really appreciate it. I actually have a couple of questions. I hope you don't mind.
Cindy, no, because we're over time already. We were supposed to end at 9. So this is what I suggest. Ask one question and send us the other questions. And we will get the answer to you.
Okay, so last year we had a number of the fire inspectors come through our neighborhood during the summertime. And we have a pretty active listserv. And one of the things that became quite apparent was that the advice that was being given to residents was very, very inconsistent from house to house, even on the same street. I've since then been doing some additional research on my own. I know some communities have specific plant lists of things that are allowable within the first 5 feet. Berkeley does not seem to have anything like that. We personally got advice that certain plants like succulents might be allowable in the first 5 feet zone and other things allowable. But I'm concerned that going forward, as people ask for advice, they really want to be able to know that that advice is rooted and is being consistently applied across different properties as people pursue their efforts at hardening their homes. So what is happening to improve that consistency? Are there approved plant lists? Are there approved regulations that we can depend upon so that we can make the improvements that are necessary?
Chief Roman?
Yes, certainly, we could always do better, and we are doing better. Up until this year, we did not have a wildland urban interface division, and we were basically using engine companies during their downtime to perform those inspections. So there was some inconsistency. Now we have a quality assurance. We have a lot more rules and regulations, and now we're actually we're going to go forward with additional ordinances as we move forward on fire prevention. So that'll be a little bit better as far as recommendations specific to specific vegetation, the succulents. Also, we're waiting for the State Board of Forestry at this point to kind of give us really definitive on the defensible space in the zero zone. Right now, it's still a lot of talk back and forth, including 2 weeks ago, we did attend a meeting and we have been active participants of that meeting at the state level also to ensure that we do have that information. And not only to ensure that, but to ensure that we have our concerns that we have here specifically to Berkeley. So that is the dramatic transition from where we were at last year to where we're at now. And certainly we will improve throughout the years. As far as specifics, I really would like you to reach out to us and so we can talk a little bit more about specifics and figure out what happened there. And certainly, a big part of it is that we have quality assurance for our inspectors out there to make sure that they're doing their work properly. So certainly, I would encourage you to give us a call and we would follow up with you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, we have 2 more questions. And then we're going to put up a card with the email address where you can send questions if you have additional questions or if you don't feel your question was answered adequately. So now we'll go to Dave Fighton.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. My question is about the real narrow streets, for example, Northampton, Santa Barbara, San Luis Road, Los Angeles Street. Is there anything being done to try and make those 1-lane streets wider so fire trucks and people can escape faster? For example, Los Angeles between Spruce Street and the Marin Circle could have the bushes removed by the sidewalk and it could be cemented in to make the sidewalk a little wider so people can park on the sidewalk, making the road much wider for the fire trucks and people to escape, since that's a major road.
Chief Roman?
Yes, correct. And thank you for bringing that up, David. That is a huge concern for us, and it is a daunting, complex task, to be honest with you. We are now engaging in some of the red striping that we have to do, the red curbing, and we're progressing forward. I actually met with the traffic division yesterday. What we're trying to do is actually get a study together to do exactly what you're talking about, potentially creating one-way streets in certain areas up there to allow for that flow of traffic, but not only for fire engines to get up there, but also people to evacuate. So it's a much bigger, complex problem, but certainly we are working on that, and that is a priority for me to ensure that we have that area is well protected and we can get to fast.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, our last question is from Lola.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm delighted to hear that there's a new division of urban wildlife interface. That's very encouraging. But the emphasis seems to continue to be on individual inspections of homes. And yet I understand that the risk is not of vegetation within 5 feet of the homes in the area that I'm in, but in highly wind-driven fires surrounded by eucalyptus trees. So for those types of neighborhoods, which includes mine, what is being done to mitigate the risk of high wind-driven fires surrounded by eucalyptus trees?
Okay, Chief.
Yes, so eucalyptus tree is only one species of many species that we're concerned about. Certainly you saw on the video that that Cheryl showed, is that was just embers at a ground level that were being pushed onto those houses. So we do have a concern of all vegetation, not just specific to eucalyptus grove. Now, I do have to say this, during our CWPP process, was the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, it will align the priority of what we need to take care of, including eucalyptus trees. So that is a big part of it. And as a matter of fact, there's some folks that are going to be part of that core group that are going to be working on that. But certainly we need to prioritize everything in the hills and all the potentials that we have out there. So it's critically important that that we participate in that at that level of analyzing all the priorities that we have, and then from analyzing those priorities, making a comprehensive plan of which ones we go after. And that's critically important. But yes, eucalyptus, we do all know that that is dangerous, but we also know that manzanita at 50 miles an hour wind behind it on fire is extremely dangerous also because of the ember cast from that also. So we do take into consideration all that, and we're launching forward with a master comprehensive plan involving all those species for sure.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, that concludes our question period. Thank you so much, everybody. And now I'd like to ask Brandon to put up the slide. Okay, if you have any further questions, please send your questions to firesafeberkeley@gmail.com. And depending upon what the question is, we will route it to the appropriate expert and get you an answer. In addition, if you have friends who wanted to see this presentation but weren't able to, we will be posting this. This presentation was recorded, and we will be sending out the link to the presentation. I'll be sending it out in my next newsletter, and I will ask Council Members Hahn and Drozdy to do the same. So once again, thank you to all the presenters. I think it was a fascinating program, and I want to thank the public for attending. We all have a lot of work to do. I guess with that, I'll say good night and be safe. Thank you very much.